If you've been listening to the podcast over the last year or so, you have heard me just mention in passing M1 and just a few reasons about why I get so excited about it and why I recommend it to my dad that he try to use it. Just it makes things so incredibly easy. But I realize that while it's really fantastic to kind of mention it in passing on a podcast as it pertains to something that we're talking about, that can kind of get missed. And if you want to come back and really focus on that, it can be hard to find that information. So we've put together this little guide just to hopefully help bridge that gap and show you why we get so excited about M1 and what it can be for people that are on the path to financial independence. So as you guys know, we're huge fans of index fund investing, low-cost index fund investing. And kind of the flagship that we always point to is VTSAX. It's a total stock market index fund. You own just a little bit over 1,000 companies at an incredibly low expense ratio. But one of the limitations of it has always been that there is a minimum amount needed to purchase this fund. It used to be $10,000, and I believe now it's still around $3,000. So someone that's listening to this, that is ready to take action, get started investing, that goes to the Vanguard platform to purchase their first mutual fund, can get their first mutual fund. This index fund can sometimes get walloped when they see they need this particular amount. And really, in many cases, this is quite literally just about getting started. I mean, the fact that the inertia of actually logging in, creating an account, and doing that is so amazing. And the earlier you can do that, the more powerful it is. So M1, in my mind, solves this perfectly. M1 allows you, there's no minimum balance. You can log on to M1. You can have an account created within 5 minutes. We've tested that out. It is quite literally the easiest thing in the world to do. It allows you to purchase ETFs with no commissions and no fees. And VTSAX has an ETF equivalent called VTI that you can actually purchase on the M1 platform. Now, this is big because you've always been able to purchase VTI. You can purchase that on Vanguard, but you have to purchase it in whole shares. So if you were to go to Vanguard and purchase VTI, you would have to be able to purchase it in the whole share amount, which at the time of this recording was right around $140. So if you want one share, you need $140. If you want two shares, you need $280. Now, that can be a little bit inefficient because sometimes we have $150 and sometimes we have $380 or whatever. We have a certain carved out amount, and it's not directly tied to how much the share of VTI is selling for in any given day. And one, again, allows us to get around this by doing fractional shares. So if you have $50, you can buy $50 of VTI, and they don't charge you anything for this privilege. So this is a rare opportunity for us to make the simple path to wealth even easier, break down those points of resistance, and give you the keys to starting your path to financial independence. I get excited for people that are very experienced and much farther along in their investment journey, but for completely different reasons. Really, it's fantastic. If you guys listen to us in episode 130 of our podcast, we were talking to Paul Merriman about the ultimate buy and hold portfolio, and he was making the case to us that while the S&P 500 and VTSAX are fantastic, and the vast majority of people fail to keep up with the market, and just buying this one fund makes it so simple. The one point he was making is the S&P 500 is by and far, it's a large cap growth fund. It's a large cap fund. So when you in the S&P 500, you own 500 huge companies. When you own VTSAX, you own just over 1,000, but still 500 of those are really, really huge, and you just have a few others. And it's cap weighted, meaning the vast majority of your holdings are really just focused on a handful of the companies that make up this fund. And what he was saying is that if you really want diversification, if you really want to own all the companies, and when you look at the companies that are drivers of wealth over longer investment horizons like 10, 20, 30, and 40 years, and in particular 30 and 40 years, small cap value tends to drive that. And you're really leaving that entire asset class on the table when you just do VTSAX or the S&P 500. Now, the counterpoint to that was, well, okay, but you're foregoing some of the simplicity. In fact, this wasn't just the case that we made to him. This is, in fact, what John Bogle said to Paul Merriman when he was sitting in the room with him. And it's a brilliant point. But what if you could get this level of complexity that Paul Merriman advises and make it as simple as VTSAX? In this video, I think we're going to make the case that it is entirely possible. And the platform that we're going to use to be able to do this is M1. Now, for advanced users, there's three other reasons that I get really, really excited about it when I talk about this, just because it makes it so seamless. Now, one of those, one of my problems with historically, one of the problems that kind of these more complex ultimate buy and hold type portfolios would have is that they require multiple moving parts. One of them being rebalancing. So if one of your asset classes gets out of whack because it's overperforming, which ideally one of them will, then the asset class that you're trying to maintain is no longer in balance. It requires you to take action on this in order to really get the results or the outcome that is being projected by the academic studies that back this up over periods of time. But it's just like dieting. Anytime you have to make an extra decision, you're reducing the likelihood of you achieving this result. What M1 actually does is it builds in rebalancing into the platform. You tell it how much of each percentage of each asset class you want to hold. And instead of you then having to make a decision at the end of the year because something has gotten out of whack, it automatically maintains those target asset percentages without you having to do anything other than a couple button clicks, which we're going to show you how to do in an upcoming tutorial series. That's unreal. Not only does it build simplicity into this entire process, but it does it without creating any taxable events, which is truly incredible. The other aspect that I love about it is how M1 can basically act as a substitute for HELOC. Now, everybody should have some form of an emergency fund, a buffer against life, essentially. But what's amazing about it is as your net worth grows, your need to have physical cash diminishes. Not to say you don't have any cash, you don't have any cash reserves, but the situation of someone that has $1 million or $2 million or something in their investment accounts, and then they're sitting on this massive amount in cash as well, you have to ask yourself, is that really necessary? Do you really need to do that? Especially if you have access to a HELOC. And if you don't have access to a HELOC, because maybe you're a renter, or for whatever reason, you're not able to get one with your particular home, M1's platform actually lets you borrow up to 30% of your invested assets with them at a variable rate, which in June of 2019 was around 4.5%. Now, this is really cool because this loan is advantageous because you don't have to sell any of your assets. So you're not going to trigger any sort of taxable event. You're not leaving the market. You're just taking advantage that you have this significant net worth to allow you to get a loan on demand if in an emergency you were to need it. Think about how powerful that is. And then for individuals that do want to take advantage of tax loss harvesting or capital gains harvesting, you can actually optimize your investments with M1 to be able to take advantage of that. So there's three great reasons that I think advanced investors are going to absolutely fall in love with the M1 platform.